Revenge films.
My name is Michelle Williams. I live together with my husband, Sean Williams, and we live in an apartment building. My husband and I first met working for the same company. We started dating and then we got married. We were about to enter our third year of marriage, but we're still just as in love as we were when we were newlyweds. Because my appearance is quite plain and I have a shy personality, to this day I don't know what my husband saw in me and why he approached me in the first place. But Sean was really kind, and he was honest and sincere, and I'm really grateful that I was able to marry a man as wonderful as him. We recently moved into our new apartment building. Our new apartment was going to be bigger than the place where we were living in before, but unfortunately, we didn't know that we were going to get caught up in an incident because of this move. After we finished moving in and had settled into the new apartment, we decided to go and greet our neighbor for the first time, and that was when it all began. When we knocked on the door of our neighbor, a woman named Alyssa came out. The moment she saw my husband's face, her first words were, "Wow, you're so handsome." And then she looked over at me, standing next to him, and she said, "So, are you his sister or something?" But when my husband replied,
"No, my name is Sean, and this is my wife, Michelle. Nice to meet you."
her response was, "What? This is your wife? But you guys aren't a match at all. You're on a totally different level." And then she over-exaggerated a laugh. This was our very first time meeting her, and she was saying something so rude that it did piss me off. But before I could say anything, my husband opened his mouth first.
"What's that supposed to mean?"
When I looked over at him, he had a scary look on his face. From the side, I tried to calm down the situation, and I said, it's fine. But then Alyssa smiled and said, "You're even handsome when you're mad," and paid no attention. As soon as we got home, my husband was still furious, and he said,
"What is wrong with that woman? Let's try not to get involved with her much."
It was rare for my husband to be this angry, but I could tell he was serious. I also didn't want to be involved with her as much as possible, but because we lived next door to her, there was no way we could avoid running into her in the apartment building. One day, when I was on my way out to do some shopping, I happened to run into Alyssa, who was on her way home from work. I just said hello, and I tried to get away as quickly as possible, but she said to me, "So, how did you get such a good-looking husband? What are you blackmailing him with to make him stay with you?" I was shocked. "Blackmail? What do you mean?" When I asked her that, her response was even worse. "There's no way that somebody as plain-looking and ugly as you could ever marry someone that handsome, so there's no doubt that you must have something on him that's making him stay with you." I couldn't help but be hurt by her words, so I didn't say anything in response, and I got away from her as fast as possible. That day, when my husband got home from work at night, I told him what happened, and once again, my husband was furious, and he said,
"I'm gonna go straight next door and give her a piece of my mind."
He started storming towards the door, but I convinced him not to because I didn't think that we should cause any trouble when we had only just moved into this apartment building. When Sean finally calmed down and came back from his anger, he did tell me the next time she said something like that to me, he wasn't going to be able to stay quiet about it. And then a few days later, it was the weekend on that day, and so Sean and I had plans to go out for the day. When we walked out of the apartment, Alyssa was standing there in front of our front door. "Oh, are you going out today? I baked you a cake myself, so if you'd like, please try it, Sean." As she said that, Alyssa handed over a homemade cake to my husband, but then he replied,
"You said something terrible to my wife the other day, didn't you? So I'm not going to accept a cake made by somebody that would say such awful things."
And he straight up rejected her. But then Alyssa said, "What are you talking about? Wait a minute. Could it be that Michelle is so jealous that I'm so beautiful that she's trying to make up rumors about me? Oh, what a tragedy. You know what, Sean? I am more beautiful than her, so I'd be happy to take you." And she said that confidently. "Obviously, there's no way that I would say such awful things to you. You're my neighbor." Alyssa was raising her voice at this point, and I could see that some of the neighbors had come outside and they were looking over at what the commotion was over here. So my husband and I decided to get away from the situation, but of course I couldn't help but be upset about it. Sean said to me,
"You don't need to worry about that, Michelle. You're far more beautiful than her. You're the most beautiful woman in the world."
And he tried to cheer me up. However, even I knew that no matter who looked at it, Alyssa was objectively more beautiful than me. So I replied, "It's fine, Sean. Even I know that I'm uglier than her, and that's a fact." But once again, he reassured me and said,
"But you're more my type, Michelle. That should be enough, isn't it?"
And he patted me on the head. This time I said, "Hey, look, Sean, there were so many other people that were far more beautiful than me in the company, and we all know that everybody was after you, so why is it that out of all those women, you ended up choosing me?" I was finally able to ask him the question that had been on my mind for years, and then his response was,
"Michelle, do you have any idea how long I had a crush on you for? You worked harder than anybody else, and you took your work more seriously than anybody else. I was so into you that I never even looked in the direction of other women. You didn't even notice that?"
And he said that to me with a serious look on his face. The moment I heard that, I was embarrassed, that even for a moment there was a part of me that thought Alyssa might steal my husband from me. And from that moment forward, I made a promise to myself that no matter what Alyssa said to me, I wasn't going to let it bother me. But that didn't last for long. One day I got a call from my husband that he was going to be working overtime and be home late. I waited that evening, but even after he told me that he was on his way home, he didn't come home for a long time, and I felt uncomfortable about it, so I decided to go outside. When I went outside, I was able to see my husband walking back home from far away, so I was relieved. However, I wasn't relieved for long because I saw Alyssa running after him from behind. And then she threw her arms around my husband. I was so shocked that I froze on the spot, and then my husband grabbed Alyssa and started walking with her. I immediately hid and watched the two of them. As it turns out, Alyssa was drunk and it hurt her leg, and she was asking for help from my husband. I followed them into the apartment building, and with Alyssa in his arms, my husband got into the elevator and they disappeared. I panicked and I rushed upstairs after them, and I saw my husband go into Alyssa's apartment with her. I put my ear up to the front door and I listened in on their conversation, but then I heard my husband's voice booming in the room.
"That's enough already. You need to cut this out. Don't even think about ever doing something like this ever again."
My husband was yelling loudly. At that very next moment, Alyssa's front door opened and my husband stormed out. When he came back into our apartment, he explained the situation to me. He said that when he was on his way home from work, he ran into Alyssa, who was completely wasted. And he said that she told him that she twisted her ankle and she needed help getting back to her apartment. But when he walked her to her apartment, the moment that the door was closed, he said that Alyssa threw herself onto him. And then he was furious and he shook her off of him and stormed out the door. He said that Alyssa kept yelling out endlessly, "Wait, please, just stay the night. I'll make it worth it." My husband looked like he had had enough, and he said,
"Maybe we should think about moving."
Even though we had just moved into this spacious apartment that we loved, I didn't want to have to move again, but if it was for the sake of my husband, I didn't feel like we had a choice, so we decided to start looking for apartments. A few days later, on the weekend again, in our apartment building, there was a pool available for residents to use, and so my husband and I decided to go up to the pool and relax a little bit. As I was waiting for my husband by the pool, I turned around and saw Alyssa, who came up, and she started talking to me. I tried to ignore her, but then she forced her cell phone screen on me and said, "So look at this. I took this the last time your husband came over to my apartment. See, look, on that day we got into the bathtub together." And she said the most ridiculous lie to me. The image was obviously taken without his permission, and it was the back of my husband as he was walking home from work that day. "Stop lying. That's enough. And you need to delete that. You took it without consent." I tried to take her phone out of her hands, but she started to get aggressive with me. "I'm not going to delete it, because this is a memory that I treasure of the two of us." And then Alyssa tried to shove me. This was when I realized that I could smell the faint scent of alcohol from her. When she tried to push me again, I yelled, "Stop that!" It was an act of self-defense, but at that very moment, Alyssa fell right into the pool. That was when my husband came out of the restroom and ran towards us.
"What happened?"
He had a worried look on his face. Alyssa then came up from the pool and said, "Sean, this woman just shoved me into the pool and tried to drown me." When she said that, my husband looked at her with a blank face and said,
"Who are you?"
and stared at her. When I looked at her face, her makeup had melted off and was all over the place. Her eyes were small and she had no eyebrows. Her face looks like a completely different person. At that moment, I said, "If you took a bath together, that must mean that my husband has seen this face of yours, isn't that right? Well then, why is it that he doesn't seem to recognize you right now?" When I said that, Sean said,
"You lied that much?"
And he let out a huge sigh. But now that her lie had been exposed, Alyssa was furious and she jumped out of the pool and grabbed my hair. And then she took the half-drunk glass of alcohol from the poolside table and she tried to pour it all over me. At that moment, my husband grabbed the alcohol from her and said,
Well, Alyssa, why don't you have a drink and calm down?"
And then he poured it all over her instead. Alyssa's makeup was running down her face even more now, and the only thing she said was, "Wait, no, my makeup!" And then she ran away from us. However, it was at that very moment, the building manager, who was doing a routine check of the pool, grabbed Alyssa by the arm and he said,
"You're the woman that was in the security footage. You must be the one that stole the delivery from the young delivery man. We have it on tape."
As he said that, he called the police. As it turns out, Alyssa was using the fact that she looks like a completely different person without makeup on, and she was stealing packages from the neighbors' apartments. Alyssa was taken straight away by the police, and she was arrested for being a stalker and for stealing. Because of the arrest, she was also fired from her job. She was no longer able to pay rent, and she ended up getting kicked out of the apartment building. As for us, now that we no longer had such a troublesome neighbor, our lives were finally able to go back to normal. According to the rumors, we heard that Alyssa moved into a cheap apartment after that. But once again, she was stalking another young man in that building, and she was arrested again. As long as she's going to keep repeating that cycle, I'm sure there's no chance she's ever going to be able to find her way back into society. After that, we had new neighbors move into the apartment next door. This time, they seemed like a family that we could get along with. 1 year later, my husband and I were blessed with our first child, and the neighbor next door was already a mother, and she was really supportive of me. I'm really pleased with our current situation, and I'm really glad that we didn't rush into moving back then.
How was today's video? If you enjoyed it, please subscribe, like, and leave a comment. Stay tuned for more.